Hi, I'm Rob Martinez, State Historian of New Mexico, and this is New Mexico History in 10 minutes. There was a power struggle in the local Catholic Church of New Mexico between Bishop Lamy and Padre Martinez of Taos in the 1850s and into the 1860s. This resulted in a breach, a schism between Catholics in Taos and the bishop, and it lingered for about a decade. Sadly, the bishop and the old Padre of Taos would not reconcile. Over the next decade to 2 decades, Bishop Lamy would fervently and rigorously go about reshaping the Catholic Church in New Mexico. He would have some successes, and in other areas, he would not be so successful. He went after the penitentes. He wanted that movement to stop. He failed in that area. He tried to suppress the local priests. Martinez was excommunicated and other priests were suspended. But Martinez was a determined man and very stubborn in many ways. And ultimately, when he passed away in 1867, he prophesied that the problem at hand with his followers in places like Taos and Mora would be fixed, would be reconciled essentially with the arrival of the Jesuits. Lamy was very good at bringing in religious orders to help, in his eyes, catechize and convert the New Mexico Catholics to the hierarchical official Catholic Church in Rome. He brought Sisters of Loreto, he brought the Christian Brothers, Sisters of Charity, all these different groups to help the New Mexicans, in his eyes, become Catholic, at least what he thought Catholics should be. The Jesuits are an interesting element because up to that point of 1867, Lamy had brought French priests, a lot of his local countrymen from France to come be priests in New Mexico. And you can see their names all over the church registers into the 1870s and 1880s. The Jesuits, also called La Compañía de Jesús in Spanish, or the Society of Jesus. They were a priestly order founded in 1540 by San Ignacio de Loyola, a very militant and intellectual order of priests that were of the times in the 1500s when there was a Protestant revolt, a revolution, the Protestant Reformation. These priests were the crack troops of the Pope. They would go out to revert Catholics who had become Protestant. And also, they took a special fourth vow to go forth wherever the Pope sent them, without question, to spread the gospel. Well, these Jesuits, that's their nickname, they are not mendicants. They are not a begging order. They are not like the Franciscans or the Dominicans. You would never call a Jesuit a friar, a fraile. They are not mendicants. They are not a begging order. This order of priests had always had an interesting relationship with other priestly orders within the Catholic Church, and at times were suspended by popes because it was believed that they were too powerful, maybe too independent. So by the 1860s, they are being targeted in Italy. So what Lamy does is he takes a group of Italian Jesuit priests and he brings them to New Mexico in 1867. And Father Martinez was right. One of the priests, Father Gaspari, was at Mora in 1867, 1868, and he is commissioned to hold a mission in Taos. These missions were similar to what Protestants had, these tent revivals, very passionate, very lively. entertaining and filled with spirit. So Gaspari goes to Taos and holds a mission, and he's able to successfully reconcile the Martinez Catholics with the rest of Lamy's Catholic Church in Santa Fe. Father Martinez asked that he be buried in his own chapel. He had constructed his own chapel in Taos where he administered the sacraments up until the time of his death. And so Father Mariano Lucero, one of Martinez's priests, did just that. That was where old Padre Martinez was buried in 1867. Through the years, Lamy would make trips to Rome, to Baltimore. He traveled a lot, and he was very energetic in reshaping New Mexico and shaping his bishopric into what he thought would be a solid Catholic center in the Southwest. So this is what's going on. By the 1870s, the mid-1870s, he had had enough of our old parroquia, the old adobe church in Santa Fe. It had been constructed during the colonial period, probably the 1790s in that period. And so he went about fulfilling his dream of having a French stone church in Santa Fe. So there are photos that show what he had done was he designed this church. He had this church designed and constructed around the old church and on top of it so that Mass could still be held. And then ultimately, when the new building was almost finished, the old church was taken down and taken out the front door in pieces. The only part that's left that's still there, you can go there, is if you're facing the altar to the left, there's a side chapel where La Conquistadora, the little statue of Our Lady, the Virgin Mary, is still held to this day. And that little chapel is made of the old adobe walls of that old church. It's quite amazing and fascinating to go to. But Lamy got his church, not completely though. He wanted giant spires reaching into heaven, but there was not enough financing, so there was no money. So today, it's still not complete, but it is a beautiful example of a French church in the middle of New Mexico. Another interesting aspect of Lamy is the small Loreto Chapel that you can visit. It's right around the corner from the cathedral. It's no longer owned by the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, but nonetheless, it showed that he missed his native France, and this beautiful small chapel is similar to small chapels you can see to this day in Paris, if you could ever visit that great city. So it's a beautiful example of French Catholic Gothic architecture, and it also has a miraculous staircase that many believe was designed and built overnight by Saint Joseph himself. It's quite an amazing work to look at. So this Frenchifying of New Mexico starts in the mid-1800s and continues. By the 1870s, by mid to late 1870s, Lamy is elevated to archbishop and Santa Fe into an archbishopric. So it's the Archdiocese of Santa Fe starting in the 1870s and the 1880s in that period, okay? So this is the Catholic Church in New Mexico, very influential. The Jesuits will become particularly influential, especially those Italian Jesuits who introduce strong devotions to Our Lady. We had them. Our Lady of Guadalupe had been part of New Mexico's Catholic culture since the 1600s, but still, the Italians will bring their flavor of Jesuit Catholicism to New Mexico that will result in a Catholic newspaper, La Revista Católica, starting to be printed here in New Mexico at Las Vegas by the Jesuits, and they will be very influential. But that's enough for now. We're going to talk about railroads and civil wars in New Mexico in the next episode of New Mexico History in 10 minutes. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego. Goodbye.